Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are going to talk about 2025's top new home and community trends. Just a real quick introduction for those of you who don't know me, Mollie Carmichael, principal with Zonda. I cover all things master plan, consumer research, and certainly product design and all kinds of different things. We're going to talk a lot about what's been happening, where trends are going, and we're going to start out with a quick introduction. I want to talk about some really big global changes that I think are impacting design as well. And then we're going to hit the top 20 new home and community trends. All 20 trends really relate to both new home and community. So it's really like 50 plus trends, but we're going to talk about the themes amongst both home and community and how those trends relate. Just a real quick introduction. For those of you, again, hopefully all of you are super familiar with us. We have a really incredible team led by quite a few people. We've got Allie, our chief economist. Of course, many of you are listening to her. Tim Sullivan, who leads our advisory team. Kimberly Byram is the best on the multifamily side. She's fantastic. Todd Tomla, probably one of the smartest guys, if not the smartest guy I know. You should be listening to all the stuff he's doing on LinkedIn and all the work he's doing in the building product side. And of course, myself. One other person who's not on here is Sean Fergus. He's leading a lot of our research efforts. And so if you're looking for regular information on what's going on out there and all the products we have, I like to think of our company as a strategy company first, but we really have a lot of data tools for all of you strategists out there as well on all things real estate investment. So again, we're here to help you make better decisions and all the tools that we have and the people we have to help you. Today, we have now more than 1,000 people. And with those numbers, we're on the ground, on the front lines, building tools to make you better, to make us better, and hopefully figure out this crazy world. And that's what this webinar is all about. For those of you who haven't used Enterprise, it's one of the greatest tools. It makes my life easier. I can spend more time strategizing and analyzing because people like Lori Lynn and Terry and their team are putting all these great tools together. So check it out. We also have a lot on master plan. We have a lot on products. We have a lot on the individual markets. Again, all of those tools I talked about that Sean's leading as well. You can get those tools there. Reach out to us. We'd love to help you with that. The master plan outlook is a new piece. That's the part of the tools that I was talking about with Sean Fergus and his team. And that basically is a high level and a regional view of what's going on from a master plan perspective. We change it every quarter and it has experts in there as well as a summary of what's changing and what the whole entire landscape is for master plans. So check that one out as well. We have UTour. It's a cool digital solution out there. We've got New Home Source. We've got Zonda digital solutions with virtual, you name it. You're going to see why that's important. And a lot of the stuff we're doing next week at Accelerate. For anybody who doesn't know about Accelerate, I hope you're going to join us next week in Austin. It is all things going on in not just the digital world, but really the categories that mean the most when you're trying to increase sales, maximize value, maximize margins, and again, all these tools lead to that. We're going to do a quick poll if you guys don't mind. For those of you who are on the call, if you can just answer this quick information. If you want more information on Zonda Enterprise or the Outlook, just click on this and we'll get back to you for sure. So again, thanks for joining us. Last but not least, don't miss Accelerate next week, as I just mentioned. So it's going to be in Austin, which that alone is kind of a fun place to be. There's going to be really great people. There's some really neat outside the industry experts coming in, inside the industry experts coming in. I think you'll really enjoy it, and I hope to see you all there. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening. We're going to talk about some trends. I want to start first with really kind of global change, what's happening there, because I really think we're starting to see it impact how we live. So as we look at some of the big changes that are happening and we look at how hard we've been hit in the last 5 years, from COVID to war to fires, we've had the energy crisis, we've had explosions in AI, earthquakes, not just the fires here in Southern California, fires in Canada. We had a huge election with a really interesting change in power. And the last 3 months alone, if you look at, the debt ceiling, the deficit, layoffs, stock corrections, there's a lot to be looking at today and a lot of concern, I think. And I would just say disruption as a whole. And I think we're seeing some sort of a pause in what's going on out there, and we'll see how that change really impacts us. But if we look at even just some of the recent Gallup polls in 2024, if you look at the percentage of people that said they were satisfied with their personal life over the last 20 years, it's the lowest it's ever been in the last 20 years, except for 2011. We all lived through that, what we refer to as the Great Recession at that time frame. And so again, there's disruption out there. It's not new, it's been there for a while, but I think people are really sort of pushing to get out there. 2 years ago in 2022 and 2023, I think we saw people really sort of confine and want to stay within their own spaces. 2024 was sort of a year of breaking out. People are really engaging and wanting to get outdoors. Some of the biggest crowds we've ever seen, whether it's concerts, um, big events, we're seeing people really go the other direction as opposed to sort of hibernating at home. They want to get out. When we look at people, when we talk to them about their health, physical health alone, you can actually see overall, if we compare excellent health, it's the lowest it's been in actually 23 years. It looks pretty stable when you look at them together, right? But then when we look at really overall good health, cumulatively, 2 years ago in 2022, lowest in 23 years, recently still fairly low by comparison. And so people are really concerned about their physical health, but they're also really concerned about mental health. So you're starting to see a lot more about mental health. There was a recent poll in Europe versus the US on how many people are actually feeling good about their mental health and how many really care about that versus physical. And it's growing at a really extreme rate. And I think you're starting to see so many more things like that in the home, in master plans, and all those things really focusing on it. This one's probably the most alarming one for me. I track this actually by market. I like this one because it's even, unbiased, completely outside the industry. And if we look back at more than the last 20 years, several decades, 21% of consumers today feel good about actually buying a home today. A lot of that has to do with affordability for sure. A lot of that has to do with the shift in interest rates, but we've seen a lot of that over time, right? I mean, if you look at the late 70s, they saw interest rates over 20%, which is crazy. And so when we do some of those comparisons, it is alarming that people are concerned about buying a home today. And so with that, I think we have even more challenges, whether you're a developer on this call, whether you're a builder on this call, what do we do to make it compelling enough that consumers will still move today? So that's what the whole focus of this is really what will move you. Because in addition to that, when we look at home prices, the positive part of this is most consumers are still very bullish about the market. They still believe it's a good investment. They still believe that prices are going to continue to increase. While it's down slightly from 2021 and 2022 when interest rates were sub 3%, it's still a very strong number today that believe home prices are still going to rise. So the next part of that too, and you guys have heard me talk a lot about this, is just what is it that really motivates customers to buy today? It's location, 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 and they have to first afford it. So who's moving with them? Can they afford it? And then the surprise for me over the last several decades has been just the importance of home design. I was at a deal makers in Seattle yesterday, and Tim asked the question to two of our leading division presidents how important home design is and was it the most important? And the answer was for them, no. And I think as I sort of talked to them after, the reason is it's so hard to find land today and it's so expensive to buy land. But home design really does fall in as your number two opportunity to maximize margins, to maximize price, and I would say maximize absorption. And so in this next year, in this difficult time, lots of stuff happening out there and prices are getting tighter. And frankly, our monthly budgets are getting tighter. What do we do? And so I always love to compare this to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we actually look at this by comparison, a shout out to David Miles, who actually, he and I both talk a lot about this. But the thing that I've aligned very directly with our customer research is just the correlation with this and how to drive a higher premium. So as we look at that motivation or that hierarchy of purchase decision, it really ties a lot with the hierarchy of needs, looking back at this. And the more and more you actually identify and create safer spaces, better amenities, prestigious factors, green technology, or social responsibility, and how you drive or design your community, all those things, the more you sort of collect in your offer, creates a higher premium, higher absorptions. And that's really our goal here in all the research that we do is how do we drive the best value and also maximize the best margins as you're designing your future. So let's look at this year's trends. I'm going to go through the top 20. The very first one we're going to talk about, and I recently just did a poll literally in the last 4 days, and we're going to talk about some of those pieces. Modern design. We asked customers a variety of different choices on what kind of home they wanted inside and out, and modern continues to trend. And let's look at that. There's some really fun trends here. But 73% of people actually feel more relaxed in a homey sort of we're calling it messiness in the age of AI. There's just so much going on and having a little bit of that eclectic look. It has like kind of embracing that imperfection or that more casual look. It's authentic. It feels more like a human experience. And certainly the light in this room helps. Even the mixed sort of eclectic look, vintage with modern mixed together is really big. Modern transitional on the outside and the inside. I think people still want the veins of traditional, but they want the look and clean lines of modern. So we're looking at sort of these designs really sort of increasing over time. And as you can see, the Art Deco kind of era, those seem to really be increasing in the future. And I can see that actually in our numbers too. The great modern farmhouse, I think so many of us have been seeing this for so long and we're so close to it. Some of us are waiting for this to trend out, but it doesn't appear to be trending out at all. In fact, I think it's accelerating. And I think what people like about it based on our numbers, you can really see it's, again, it has those traditional veins, but it's approachable, it's casual, and it continues. And frankly, the numbers are rising on modern farmhouse on the exterior and modern farmhouse, or what I would call modern casual, on the inside. It continues to rise as of 3 days ago. So it's going up. Physical wellness, really big. This is really big today. I mean, with all the stuff you're seeing and changing out there, 56% actually prefer smaller yards and more amenities. So they're willing to take sort of that more cottage look. We can do duplexes, 18 to 22 to the acre. We can do a small lot detached, 10 to 15 to the acre. There's some really great, interesting things you can do if they're offset within a master plan with, some unique and special amenities. And you can see, according to a recent survey that was done, obviously buyers are opting for smaller yards. And why is that? Because that's what they can afford. It's lower maintenance too. So for some of the move down buyers or with the rise of single population, certainly very popular with more single led households. But amenities they'll pay for them and they'll look for them. The obvious one for physical is trails and parks, right? We know that trails continues to lead at the top. It's not number one anymore, but trails are certainly a draw. They're easy to incorporate. You have to have sidewalks. You have to have, different amenities throughout, connect them. And trails are certainly a part of that. And certainly parks are an opportunity. Pickleball. If I talk to so many master clients that need to add more pickleball courts. I do want to underscore though, Nobody wants to live next to a pickleball court because they're loud. So be careful where you place them. But it is growing at really high numbers, and the increase and need for more pickleball courts continues to be a draw and continues to be a focus. Top golf. Whether you use Top Golf or not, that specific brand, but I will tell you the idea of golf courses, it's anywhere from 74 to 150 acres needed to do a golf course. I would tell you that golf today, again, most people know this, 15 to 20% that live in a golf course neighborhood actually golf. But the idea of getting out into nature or those that really love golf, the Top Golf-like environment is certainly very popular. It takes about 15 acres, so it's substantially smaller. So creating something like that Top Golf experience is an opportunity for those golf enthusiasts. I will tell you too, from a percentage or preference, it's a smaller percentage, but Top Golf, that whole concept has been very popular. As we look to just simple things like going to the gym, different ways to get people to come to the gym, enjoy that experience. Rancho Mission Viejo's done a really great job of sort of that open air gym. It's frankly lower energy bills. You don't have to air condition that space. You roll up the garage doors. People love sort of the fresh air coming in, and it's a great view. So it's a really nice thing to do. This is a new thing that probably you've heard about, but this is a great little unique store. There's now two of them, but I'm seeing this stuff pop up everywhere. The whole healthy gut phenomenon is big. And so this is a store that's looking at just different ways to approach sort of the healthy gut thing. And so whether it's bone broth or all the different things they're doing, there's all kinds of new proteins that are being created that now sort of offset the meat lovers. It tastes just like meat, and it's shifting to just a whole new culture out there. And so as you're looking for amenities and things like that, you're starting to see much more of these kind of healthy choices, and even an entire store dedicated to healthy gut, healthy living. And again, it's this fermentation farm. This is, I'm telling you, you can go there Tuesday, 3 p.m. and it's bustling with people. It's crazy how many people come to this. The whole, on that note, farm to table experience. So a really, I think, authentic approach. I'm a really big fan of communities that sit next to authentic farms that are in place, and using that farm for their ingredients, or integrating sort of natural foods that they're actually growing locally, and again, bringing that into it. Babcock Ranch, when they opened up, they were so smart in the choices they made, the amenities that they placed, and their very first restaurant was a farm to table experience, sitting on water, and it really attracted families and move down buyers that really loved not just healthy living, but the whole environment together really made for a great place. Agritopia, this is an older master plan, much older master plan. This is another great example. I think the best amenity they have there is Joe's Farmer's Grill. It literally, again, the original farm was there, sits right off to the side. They use healthy ingredients. And again, Tuesday or Thursday at 3, any time of the day, you have a bunch of 50 somethings or maybe 65 somethings and these little young families lined up around the block to eat at this little restaurant. Then there is the whole farming community. Again, authentic farm, originally there. This is a new community that Mattamy is doing. Newfield, it's actually in Martin County in Florida. We have a feature coming up in Inspirational Leadership on the leader who actually led this whole design with Mattamy. It is fantastic. And so they've kind of mixed a little bit of urban town. It's a higher density neighborhood, but again, they're sitting off this original farm and they've integrated this whole experience together. And for sure, they'll get a premium for designing it together. Health and wellness oriented features. You guys have heard me talk about clean air, clean water, but we certainly see a really big growth in that category. I have so much information for you on that. This is not pre-sponsored by any of the groups like Delos or some of those that are studying this. But if you have not been in a full house that has the 92% or greater clean air, you can feel it. It's phenomenal. And I think it's a differentiator. it's a differentiator against not only your new home competition, but certainly the resale competition. But it's certainly something to think about. And I do think, based on our research, over 60 to 80%, depending on the segment, said that they would actually pay for those features. Overall, we show that analysts predict that the whole wellness market's going to grow by 15.8%. The numbers there are like huge by comparison. So mental wellness, you saw all the stuff. It's not just physical wellness, it's mental wellness. So lots of interesting trends there. And a lot of that can just come in the form of green, which we'll talk about. But if you check out, the whole yoga on the lawn experience, Barefoot Lakes, has their yoga space right there out there on the lawn. I'm designing a lot of indoor, outdoor spaces where you roll up the garage door and that fitness experience just extends right outside the door. And then you can use that with some sort of like multifunctional, multi-purpose for events and all those kinds of things too. Obviously, sitting in this beautiful environment certainly helps. But even things like meditation decks, depending on the topography of the land that you're working with, this is a really simple, but a really cool feature, very memorable, something that makes this kind of special and different compared to another master plan you might be looking at. And it doesn't take a lot of space. I'm always looking for unique, special experiences that you don't have to have 14 acres like you would for, to move a farm in that wasn't there to begin with. This is something that I think people will remember and think is unique and special. Meditation as a whole is actually not just moving to the outside, but certainly the inside. So depending on the culture, I just saw Woodside Homes. They had an entire home dedicated, and they have these small little prayer spaces. And we were doing some customer research just on what spaces really liked. And this prayer space continued to come up. And it's really interesting. These can be as small as like a little pantry, but they're just these little spaces, again, for meditation or prayer. Frankly, it could flex as a tech space as well, but really interesting to see some of these new spaces coming up. Digital living, I don't have to tell you guys, you need to be thinking about offices and tech spaces and all those kinds of things, but it would be remiss if I didn't touch on technology, right? So whether it's security, lighting, climate control, you name it. Interestingly enough, the things that you would expect to rate high are rating high. Obviously, like low E glass, but things like remote lighting, I was surprised to see that rate as number 2 as one of the most wanted features. But it's logical, right? If I walk into a room and the light comes on, if I walk out of the room and the light goes off, we all have that at our offices. Why don't we have that at home? And so making some of those things just natural energy savers is great. Spatial technology, we're seeing a lot of change. The numbers on this, if you look at growth related to just spatial technology, it's phenomenal. So healthcare, education, 3D virtual stores, we're seeing, entire master plans dedicated to these spatial technology, virtual reality pieces. I've covered this a lot on previous webinars. Hotels are going into this space all over the world, but we're going to see a lot of change that is virtual, not just in home selections and all the things that we're very good at, but we're going to see it in our lives in a whole different way. Sustainability, it's really, I hate to say this, but sustainability is really important. And I think people want to impact the future and the future of future generations, right? But what they really want most is to impact the green in their pocket as well. So as we looked at things that they really want, again, solar is very popular, but it's most popular in sort of the sun states or the smile states, right? So over 50% in the sun states really want it. The percentage of homes as a whole is expected to increase by about 18%. Doesn't seem like a huge number by 2032, but that's all homes, right? The solar is going to continue to grow. Net zero is sort of on the curve up, so we're watching those numbers really trend up, but still relatively low based on the cost. Most customers today want a lot of these features, but not as willing to pay for all of those features. So that's one of the things we really spend a lot of time on. So top sustainable features based on our last week's research: energy efficient windows, Motion sensing lighting came up very high. Home battery storage, and particularly for the older buyer that just wants control of their life and their world, energy monitoring, and then higher performance installation. Those were really the top 5 that had rated based on our most recent research. New energy sources, as we talk about home batteries, again, those numbers are really growing. We're also seeing like large scale energy sources that you're probably familiar with. Tesla's got their 300 megawatt mega pack coming in Texas that's supposed to reshape storage. We've got some other really big companies like Best that are working to really stabilize grid systems with all the new energy storage that's needed. And we're also seeing electric homes starting to trend up for the most part, but the one big thing here is it's still at 30%. So electric and gas, in my opinion, I would always offer electric and gas as your standard. And if somebody wants an all electric home, offer that as the option, unless you're forced to do it. And then I'd go there. But today it's still at about 30%, but it's growing because it used to be closer to 20%. So it is going up. Green. So this is really fascinating when you look at both master plan and you look at home. So I was thinking about this last night as I was kind of preparing for this. So I added this in here. If you look at master plans, and I've done tons of focus groups throughout the country on sort of what creates value for a master plan. Why is this area more expensive than that area? And truly what's driving premiums from Summerlin in Las Vegas, Scottsdale in the Arizona market, the Irvine Ranch certainly in Southern California, the Woodlands in Houston. It's green, and it's just greener neighborhoods. It's amazing. And one of the number one reasons you lose to a resale home is because they have better landscapes. So the more you can incorporate green, it is really one of the keys to success in designing a great master plan and, frankly, a great neighborhood. On that note, I had just heard of a community, actually, Tesoro Viejo, where they actually have a nursery, and every homeowner gets I think it's a 36-inch box. Randy Jackson at Placework shared that, and I thought, God, that's such a great way to get instant green and think about it ahead of time. It doesn't necessarily have to cost you more, but it is thoughtful planning. So great job. So you've heard the word, this is like the new buzzword. It has been for the last several words, biophilic design. So certainly, again, anything with organic materials, natural light, lush greenery, inside and out. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in this space, right? So it was the number one search on Google related to interior design last year. And it certainly is beautiful, and it looks like everybody would want to live there. And on that note, light. If I were to say, again, doing this for a very long time, it's probably the number one thing all age groups ask for. They want more light. One of the questions I asked was, what are you looking for in your next home, or what would make you move? And light continues to come up. In fact, it was the number one top interior feature that they said they wanted when they were looking for their next home and what would make them move. So, and I love this quote, lighting is truly like a jewelry to a room. For me, it's the centerpiece of the room. It makes the room, or it really can break the room too. We've all heard this one, the open floor plan, but it was number 2, one of the as the top interior feature they wanted, of course, when they were looking for what would make the move yet. So it's still very, very popular. I believe the reason open floor plan is so popular is because of the first one, which is light. It brings light into every space. There are times when the open floor plan plays against you, obviously, when you have multiple conversations going on and you're trying to do more than one thing at the same time, but certainly very popular. Indoor, outdoor living, again, right there back to light. So open floor plans, certainly it's blending those indoor, outdoor spaces. They're super, super popular. 78% of industry experts identified seamless indoor, outdoor transitions as really one of the biggest trends. So certainly that's a big one. The numbers we have for those that will actually pay for these big sliding glass doors, because we actually put a number to it, it's close to about 80% that say they want this. So again, if the floor plan design and the size of that floor plan really works well, do it. Home office, home office is really big today. Interestingly today, the majority actually want a home office. It's over 80%, and about 1 in 5 actually want 2 home offices. But this was really fascinating. In this recent research that we just did in the last week, 47% said they would trade, and I've always wanted to ask this question. 47% said they would trade their interior laundry for another interior tech space instead. I thought that was wild. I'm going to investigate that with floor plan changes, and we're going to do some more research on this. But that was a really big finding for me. 42% said they would trade a garage space for either another bedroom or office. In markets like Southern California, the Bay Area, Seattle, Denver, DC markets, you name it, the really expensive markets. The big question is do you do a one-car garage? And do you give them another bedroom downstairs? This research says I would do half the mix that way. And we're seeing a lot of support with the RENA numbers and some of the things that we need to do to actually create more affordable housing. This is an interesting solution, and now we've got some customer research to support it. The evolution of family. If we look at this could get really political, but when we look at the percentage of people over the age of 25, if we look at 55 plus, traditional family and marriage happened much younger. If we look at age 25 to 35, the number of alternative lifestyle, the number of single, not married, not going to get married, the number of couples not going to have children, it's just changing so much right now. And so politically, I suspect we're going to see some change there too. But some fascinating information on just multi-generational living. I think the aging population, and you look at the numbers and how much longer we're living, and when you look at those numbers decade after decade, that's only going to get much bigger. So almost 50% based on our research today want to accommodate either their aging parents or their adult children in their next home. And the numbers are pretty comparable with aging parents and adult children. But when you look at the cost to support your aging parents, this is definitely something to look at. We asked, because you have to give up 2 bedrooms to get that multi-generational space, and 46% said yes. It was the best way I could figure out how to see if they would pay for it. Would they trade 2 of their bedrooms for one multi-generational suite in their home today? And almost half said yes. The rise in single households. It's the fastest growing segment today for all the reasons I just explained to you. And today, 30% of today's consumers would actually consider an attached home as their next home. It used to be about 20%. And remember, this is a national number. Depending on where we did this, this number could go up, and in some cases it could go down. But nationally, 30% would consider an attached home. They always favor townhomes that were stacked flats, but it was about 20% said they would consider a stacked flat, and it was closer to 30% said townhomes. They could choose more than one, by the way. So that's why I just averaged attached as a whole as 30%. And while almost 50% of today's consumers really do want a single level, single family detached home, well, the economics don't support that, unfortunately. And 50% of today's new master plans are not going to have single story, one stories, but we do isolate that. We do look at how we would segment that and how we'd make that happen. I really believe a great market, again, is in that sort of cottage portion. And how do I get density up and still offer single story? There was a really cute community that was done a while back, 9 to the acre. And one of those little homes was a single story, first one to sell, highest premium. It was amazing. But there's ways to get there at an affordable price. 10, transportation. This is so funny. So I went with my family. Unfortunately, it was a funeral, kind of a bummer. I'm in Phoenix, and these cars are showing up everywhere. And so my sister looked at her, she goes, nobody's driving that car. And they're everywhere in Phoenix. And so these driverless taxis are the wave of the future. You're going to see a lot more of this. And, forward-thinking communities like Babcock, they've already had a driverless shuttle that, can take your kids to school. In the beginning, they had to, add a driver in there because some people get nervous about it. My sister said she'd never do it. I wouldn't think twice about getting in this. It's probably safer than, frankly, my sister driving. Sorry, sisters, if you're listening. But think about those features. This would be so great for like an active adult community. And again, it takes away some of the manpower you might need to do it. There's an investment, I'm sure, for this different kind of technology. But man, I wasn't surprised to see driverless. I was surprised to see this many driverless taxis on the road. So this will definitely be changing. Electric charging stations, not a really new news here, but just the rise, obviously, in electric vehicles is rising. But over 50% really want at least the pre-wire for electric charging. So I can't imagine designing and selling new homes without at least pre-wiring for this, and then offering the feature because, again, that's going to continue to evolve. Education. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about education, particularly as it relates to master plan. The big thing here is schools can change everything. If you look at, again, places like the Irvine Ranch, they invested heavily in their local schools, and they really sort of turned the dime on the education there. Now I think Uni High is like #1 in the country, but that really changes the value. So if you have a category or a piece of land where the education isn't great, I would just say think outside the box. With technology today, I have to believe there are better ways to influence, your schools and coming in with new ways to do this. Charter schools like River Islands, out in Lathrop, they certainly did it with not one but two. Babcock Ranch brought in something similar, same thing, just spilling with opportunity and people wanting to be there. And they took an objection and just frankly completely turned over, and they're getting paid for it. So we all know education is really important. I'm just saying, as you look to 2025 and forward, think differently about it because I think technology can really change that. And certainly charters are an opportunity for that. But I think technology is too. Walkability. Unknown. Sorry, guys, I probably should put that on mute. So walkability, everybody kind of wants to walk to this, right? They want their town center, they want their Main Street concept, but these are really hard to financially make work up front, especially if you're doing these in sort of the tertiary locations where big pieces of land actually exist. So what used to be the new club where you walked into that sort of stodgy big fireplace, club chairs, all that stuff. But there really was nothing beyond these big open spaces, which were great and are great for events and things like that. Those clubs are now turning into hubs, and it's, a place to meet for coffee, glass of wine. It's really a real true extension of the family room or office, but it has some of these things incorporated into those small spaces. So I know of communities that are being planned that haven't been released, so I don't want to expose that confidentiality, but there's really a unique approach to getting something like this in smaller spaces in those tertiary locations before you can then really get the 4,000 plus rooftops in there to make this happen. Coastal. Everybody wants coastal. Everybody will pay more for coastal. I've talked a lot about water, but water really today is the new gold. And I want to talk about this because whether it's a lake or a crystal lagoon, you can see all the communities that Al Brendy and his team have actually brought to these tertiary locations. And it just completely turned absorption and pricing for those communities over. You get 15 to 30% premiums for water. Golf is 10 to 17. Parks and trails are 4 to 7, maybe. You get significantly higher absorptions. You can change what that location really has meaning to. You can bring retail to it. You can bring a hotel to it. You get premiums of more than just housing in these spaces. And here's the biggest thing for me. Once you have the water amenity in, it actually costs less water to maintain it. So if you can get the jurisdictions heads around this, because I know there's sensitivity to all those things, but if you look at some of these different areas, water is really a neat feature. And oh, by the way, a golf course, again, we just saw the numbers. It's, 75 plus acres. You go into some of these, these urban farms that are, a minimum of 14 acres. Something like this, I recommend, anywhere from 4 to 8 acres roughly to do it right and well. And some of that's plenty. So it doesn't take as much land either. So definitely something to consider as you guys are looking at future designs. I threw this in there. It was a really fun fact. One of the new analysts I'm working with actually pulled this, and I thought it was clever. But have you ever heard of Nancy Meyer's aesthetics? I haven't, but it was the number 2 phrase search last year when it came to aesthetics and style. And so it's really kind of got this kind of traditional coastal-y feel to it. And again, rating very high. Authentic farm. So again, I'm a big fan of authentic farm. My big plug here is, again, it takes you anywhere from 12 to 14 acres to have a farm. So much of that farming, especially when you're adding it in and it wasn't once there, to me feels a little contrived, but I do love the emphasis on healthy living. I do love the emphasis on education. I do love the emphasis on giving kids, a place to play and learn and all those things. But just make sure the lifestyle, the involvement, the education is a big part of the program. And as you're driving up to that community, that they understand what that is. Because if it is a small plot of garden, sometimes it can look funny, unruly, and again, not very authentic to its place. So just make it real. And I love the play off of existing farms and letting that farmer continue some part of it and contribute back to whether it's a local hub, whether it's a local restaurant, whatever that is, integrate it. 15, multi-purpose. So kind of multi-purpose everything, whether it's home or in the community. 72% of consumers prioritize personalized home experience. So this cute little cubby, I just love little spaces like this. These are the little special things I think that are memorable. I think it makes your home different from, someone else's. Certainly the wood beams help. But anything that's kind of focused on personalized, sensory focus, it feels, the wellness comes from the light and some of the natural materials here. But multifunctional spaces, when we asked people what they wanted, what would make them move, another interior, this was number 3 to the first 2 I shared. Multifunctional space was number 3. So what would actually make them move? So again, just little spaces where you can have that little tech space. I love just even the introduction of that little curtain coming in and out. If you have not seen the home that we did, Karen Bonder led with Ashton Woods on the multifunctional spaces and how to sort of, transform home. It is so cool. Check it out. And we did it with all of our kind of Zonda virtual tools. It is so neat to see how you can have choice within the same walls. Check it out. Flexible living spaces on that, homes just designed with flexibility, I think are huge. So whether it's an office or a guest room or a workout room, or frankly, like for me, the room I'm sitting in is a little bit of an office, it's a little bit of a teen space. But people really want sort of that, flexibility. So 63% of home buyers consider home office as a desirable feature. And then, with 23% deeming it as essential. Now, my numbers show that 80% actually want it, and those are based on new home shoppers. So I definitely would be looking for that for sure. 16, shade it, whether it is the back of a home or whether it's in a community. I've definitely shared a lot on the arena at Pecan Square, but I'm seeing these really pop up in a lot of spaces throughout the country. Just that outdoor space that can be the chili cook-off. It could be pickleball. It could be hockey. It could be, where the bandstand comes and there's a great concert there, whatever it is. But these outdoor spaces, it's one of the top features that people want in parks is shaded areas. So be sure to include shade. And I think trees are just a natural way to shade, but structured shades are huge. And same thing for the outdoors, right? The real key to these outdoor living rooms, though, that I would emphasize can make or break a floor plan. Don't cover it too much. If you're covering the whole back space of the great room, you don't want a dark great room because remember, light was number 1. So this could be covered over by the kitchen nook area or covered off the family room, but I wouldn't cover both. And so be very careful. But I will say this, these covered outdoor spaces, whether on an attached room, whether it's in like on the deck, on the roof, or again, for this is a single story home, it's coming off the back. People just love to have that space just as if it were another room in their home. And it can live that way too. Just like this one done by Toll Brothers. It's beautiful. Connections. So all things connections, and I would say probably the number 1 least expensive thing you can do in a master plan is social infrastructure. So doing that very well, I think, is super important. But even just having these really clever, memorable spaces like this, This is a neat stat from Nextdoor. 80% of Nextdoor users affirm the importance of neighborly connections. And I would tell you it's 100%. These are the kinds of things that I hear about in the focus groups we do. I hear from community members that say, here's why I love living in this community. I remember way back in the day, and I could quote many of these, whether it was Playa Vista or Ladera Ranch, where people would be crying. The villages in Florida would be crying in these groups because they never thought they would have the kind of social connectivity that they have in those communities, and it's fantastic. And so just offering these kinds of spaces. Now, remember when I said to you, you could have a club or a hub. This is a great example of hub. This could be one building, a clever little building. It could have coffee and wine and a little outdoor pit like this. And this would be just as great as that Main Street concept was as well. And then on the inside of the home, just kind of focusing on social connectivity, right? So just little clever, memorable spaces. These are the little things that make your home very different from someone else's. And for me, these are the kinds of spaces that would make me move. Safety. There's so much I could talk about in the safety category. Certainly very important. There's a close correlation between safety and education, actually, as well. But if you look at the numbers in just real-time monitoring, and the numbers we have on the percentage of people that would love to have monitoring at the park. Imagine your 8 or 12-year-old sending them to the park, but you could check on your phone just to make sure they're there, they're safe, they're well. The number one thing that is really hurting children, and in some cases killing children, is obesity today. And we're keeping our kids indoors way too much. There's a whole study and phenomenon about this. There are great books about this. We've got to get our kids outdoors. And real-time monitoring really can help you, whether it's in the parks, at the community hub, at the pool, whatever. But this is a huge business. They project it to be about a $259 billion industry by 2032. It's going to continue to grow. And I think people no longer see it as Big Brother. I think they now see it as a feature because we've been using it for so very long. We're getting to the end here, folks. So number 19, the 92% rule. You guys have heard me talk about this. I think I've been talking about this since 2002. Thank you, John Martin. But it's really when we look at the influence of women in purchasing a home, it's huge. And the influence of women in purchasing anything is huge. Just ask my husband. 92% of all home purchases are led by a woman. That's a huge number. So as I was looking at this audience yesterday and they were talking about design, respectfully, we had 3 male division presidents up there, which is great. But when you're asking the question about home design, I would imagine, just based on my own research, it may not have been as prevalent with them. And I'm not suggesting that men don't value design. All 3 of them absolutely value design. But I do think in a lot of organizations, to get more involvement for the customer who's making that decision, it's huge. Today, 85% of all consumer purchases are led by a woman. It's a huge number. They are set to control about 2/3 of the US consumer wealth by 2030. So they are just making the decisions. It's a huge amount of the wealth out there. 1 in 5 homes purchased today are for a 55 plus consumer are actually purchased by a woman, and 1 in 8, all ages, are actually purchased by a woman. So getting those influences, getting those opinions, and all those little special spaces. Again, look at where we started in this webinar. There is so much unrest and so much change and so many reasons with rising interest rates, or even just interest rates as high as they are. Depending on the market, it's up to 80% to have an interest rate under 5%. How will we make them move? Really understanding what will make them move is huge. And so on that, I want to underscore number 20, just the importance of design. And so when we look at just things like home design, it can make or break your margins. So part of the discussion we had was, hey, if I've got the right location and the right price, it's going to sell. Well, I'm going to say that's true. I absolutely 100% agree with that. But I'm also going to say, if I increase the functionality or the design or create a special feature in there, I'm going to argue I can sell it for more and I don't have to spend more. And I'm going to show you guys a house. It's a nod to a great friend of mine. And I've shown this home historically before, Nick Leonard. We did a lot of research to say kind of what should we do in home design. This was with KTGY at the time. And there were just interesting things that we thought about. So this is, again, this can be a 1-car garage. It can have this tiny little space that could have been a pantry, that could be a little crash space or a sleeping space. You can see an example of it down here. You can have another garage or a porte-cochere, or you could have a multi-gen space. Now remember, this space, when you look at it from a size perspective, we actually can plot this product at 10 to the acre as an example. Again, a really great room, an Amazon drop zone. I mean, who's doing those really today? The only thing I would do is turn this kitchen so I could get glass off the back to connect with this outdoor room. Going upstairs, again, I can have a home office, I can have a pool table room, or I can have a whole nother bedroom. I've got another 2 bedrooms. I can have 1 office or 2 offices. I can have a nursery off this room. I can have an exercise room off this room. I can have a fantastic bedroom. And again, all of this, again, any home could sell at any price at 10 to the acre, but this would sell for more. And again, I don't think it has to cost more. So when you really look at some of those spaces again, you can do some really clever things. And I think that's where it makes a difference. And then when we looked at the site planning for this one, Pat Murphy and his team and some of the people that really collaborated on this, you can really start to see just how, even if you just change the movement of that street with that same kind of density, how that can really influence the design of that small lot detached product. The other big thing too is just from a premium perspective as it relates to master plan, and I want to underscore this. I've done a lot of research on this. Allie's done a lot of research on this. There are several folks that have looked at this, but it's proven based on our research that master plan can drive a 5 to 20% premium consistently, depending on what kind of features you add. Those features are what determine your premium, but it also consistently sells for 1 or more a month when we look at that good times or in bad. So when I look at sort of what projects actually didn't do well, they were in tertiary locations, no amenities, typically outside of master plan, and they were stripped down boxes. So that's the caution as you move into 2025. Just be sure you're putting the value where the value counts the most. And on that note, I want to end with, we have so many virtual reality features for you. There's so many things we can help you with, whether it's interior of the homes, designing the community virtually. I'm doing so many planning sessions where we're not only site planning, coming in with segmentation from product, but we're actually doing a 3D version so they can see how this community is going to feel, especially when you're using unique densities that maybe the developer or the builder might not feel very comfortable with. We can show it and say, nope, this is how it's going to look, this is how it's going to feel, and it's really reasonable. But for the customer today, customization was the number 2 feature. They also are looking for, when we ask them about design features, what they were looking for. So they really want to be able to customize. So to be able to show them what those are looking like, their biggest challenge with customizing is not everybody's a designer. So I know packages certainly work. We're showing about 70% really do love the idea of packages, but they want the packages with the idea that they can actually change, 1 or 2 features here and there. And we're going to talk a lot about that next week, sorry, at Accelerate, and all the things that we're doing in that space. So with that, those are your top 20 trends in home, in community. I hope they were helpful for you. If there's any way that we can help, I really would appreciate you reaching out. We'd love to help you in any way that we can. And I hope you found this information useful. Throw anything in the chat if you have questions. And Amanda, I don't know if you have access to the chat. I'm not seeing it here.
We do, but we don't have any questions at the moment.
Okay, great. Or just email me and you guys all know how to get a hold of me. Okay, that's it. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We're 3 minutes early. I hope you guys have a great 2025. Take care.